I'm going to talk about how to trim your dahlias, having got them out of the ground, how to clean them up, get them looking like you can recognise various parts, and then what you might want to do with it afterwards. But this video is on cleaning up and trimming your dahlia tubers. We're going to start processing the dahlia tubers today, getting them ready for winter storage, and I've got a number of different challenges here, so I thought it would be useful to go through how we're going to deal with each type of clump and decide which method of storage for winter would be best for the particular situation. So the first ones we're going to look at are the Arete Bliss, which were from single tubers, and we're just going to have a look at those, take away any broken tubers, take away any obviously rotting tubers, cut the stems down to about 2 to 3 inches, ready for storage, and then we'll be deciding how to go on to the next step. In the smaller polytunnel now, and we've got some more tubers which came out of the ground before the ones we've just looked at in the big polytunnel. So this is the small polytunnel, and these ones here are about a week in after removing, almost a week. This is Hillcrest Jersey, and because they were likely to dry out a bit too quickly, I've just covered the whole mass. I've put the whole mass together for comfort, and then I've covered it in some horticultural fleece, which will make the environment in there, the air in there, a little bit damper, because the moisture can't escape. We've done the same over here. Let's have a look at these here. This one is Kilmore. So these aren't too bad, just on first look. You can see that the tubers are long and thin, so I'm thinking if I'm going to divide these down into single tubers, then they will wrap up nicely in cling film because they're long and thin, while these ones are a bit fatter. So I'm thinking, as I'm looking at these, which method shall I use to store these over winter? And we're going to go through all the options, and so that you can decide what to do with your dahlias. Again, we'll be coming back to these to clean them up as the video goes on. I've got some old trimmers there, Felco 310, which is a lovely size I find, although they are pretty lightweight. Got some proper Felco 2 secateurs there, and some big loppers which will be used to cut through the sometimes very large stems, sharp knife in case we need it. And I've got some bleach solution, said to be 10%, but I just put 3 or 4 concentrated drops into this beaker size, and if it smells like bleach, then you're probably good to go. And then I've got some antimicrobial wipes for use on things where wet bleach is not suitable, because as we go through and divide some of the tubers, they are carrying disease, fungal and bacterial disease, which can promote rot. So it's a good idea to sterilise your instruments each time you change tuber type. So we'll go and get some tubers now and start off the job. So these are all the Arete Bliss from the large polytunnel. There's about maybe 10 or so tuber clumps here, and we'll just go through these. These are not difficult, so I'm just going to trim away the hair roots now, which is a quick, easy job. Also getting rid of any obviously damaged or thin tubers that are just not viable. This one's broken at the neck. Everyone's got their favourite tools for doing this job: pair of scissors, hedge trimmers, sheep shearers. Slightly rotten bit there, so I'm keeping my bleach close by. So we've got rid of the majority of the hair roots, and we'll now have a close inspection and see whether we can see anything that needs attention at this stage. We just have a look here. As you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we've got about 10 or so individual tubers, and they're all meeting the stem. And as you know, round about here is where the eyes will form, and that's the working part of the rejuvenation process next year. So we've got our stem, we've got, this is the mother tuber, this is the tuber which was originally planted. If you remember, there was only one tuber that was planted because these brought up that way. This is Arete Bliss. So this tuber here was planted. Here is the shoot as it came away and became a new plant, and then subsequent to that this area has put out first of all its roots to maintain the plant during the growing season, and then as the plant grew and the leaves began to produce sugars and starches, they were sent down to the root system to become storage organs, and that's what tubers are. They're storage of food which the plant made during the growing season, and is maintained there and getting ready to be used during the growth phase once the plant starts to grow again next year. So now let's look at some more troublesome tubers. These are the ones I mentioned before which came out of the wet ground. We've salvaged as much as possible. Just example of some that are not in good condition, and they look a bit of a, well, they are a bit of a mess, and it looks as if you couldn't fathom out what's where and what's useful and what isn't. But you'll find that once you start to cut away the roots, that the whole thing becomes much more fathomable. So if we wanted to conserve this tuber, there's some rot here. If we're keen to conserve this tuber, then there's probably some viable tissue there. But I'll be wanting to divide this further here in autumn so that I can get single tubers with eyes from this, because I fear that if I stored that until spring, that it will simply rot. I'm doing the same tubers, so I'm not going to sterilise. A lot of damaged tissue, but there'll be some viable, because this area here there are eyes, so that tuber I think I can probably get that to grow. That one's gone. There's very little left there, isn't there, but I think that's the mother tuber. But I've got one tuber that will probably give me one dahlia, and if you put the clock on 100 years, that could be 20,000 dahlias, so I'll preserve that. So you can see the value of taking the roots away, which doesn't take long, just a minute or so for each one. And you can then see what you've got. We've got a tangled mass of tubers here. There is the stalk area, so when I come to divide, I'll be putting a chisel or something right through the middle there, break it apart, and then you can begin to see the structure and where you might be able to get some tubers with eyes. So although these look really bad at first sight, once we've divided the roots away and had a look at it, we'll find that we've almost certainly got some viable tissue for next year. This completely rotten part of that tuber there. At some stage you think, well, it's not worth persisting with that because there's so much rot, this old wet rot there, so I'm going to discard that. So to summarise the process of cleaning up your tubers ready for storage, the first task is to have a look at the overall clump and see whether there's anything obvious that needs attention straight away, such as rot, such as damaged tubers, such as loss of label. And then we're going to trim away the hair roots. If you do it in a systematic way, for instance starting with the tuber stem pointing upwards and go from left to right, first of all on top, and then we're going to turn the tuber over and do the same from the bottom. So I'm just going round and round, cutting off all the little scrappy bits of roots. They often emerge from the bottom of a tuber, sometimes from the side. And often if it all looks a bit of a mess before you start, by the time you've finished trimming off the hair roots, it's much more easy to see what's going on. If there's any very thin tubers like this one, it's not going to serve any purpose, so I'll remove that. And if there are any that are obviously damaged, such as this one, damaged neck usually, then we'd remove that. And then from the underneath, do the same job. Usually go left to right, or clockwise. It's not left to right, is it? It is clockwise. The purpose of this really is just so that you can see the structure properly. They're not going to do much harm really, these roots, if you did store them with the roots on, although they do stop air circulation a bit, and that's one of the things that's good for the tuber when it's in storage, is air circulation. We'll talk about storage in another video. So it's looking a lot neater now, and we can see if there's any areas that need attention. In this case, not really. Lots of nice tubers there, lots of areas where I think that the eyes are likely to be, and that's what we'll be looking for when we do start to divide them into singles, if we decide to divide them into singles. We'll be looking for the eyes so that we can make sure there's an eye on every one that we choose. So that's clean and tidy. No areas of rot that we can see. We've got rid of the broken tubers. This one here I've missed. It's quite a big tuber. Is it the mother tuber? Possibly. I think it is. It does feel thicker and older. So I'm going to take that out. Sometimes if you just bend it, it'll snap. There we are. But I've got some cleaning up to do now because there's some tissue that's split. I want to use my knife for that one. Found it. If you can see in there, there's a sort of raw area of flesh that's inviting rot once it goes into storage, so and it's deep in a hole, so I'm just going to do my best to tidy it up without doing damage to other parts. There we are, that's not bad. So I've just cleaned it up and I've got a nice clean edge now. I think that was doing much, that little one. You see what I mean about these long nose. And that's now ready for storage. Nope. No, it's not. I've not cut the stalk. A little look at the stalk to see whether there's any areas of rot, and there isn't. There's often a hole there, but that looks nice and clean. If it looked blocked, I'd open it up a little so that air can get in there to dry it out. But that looks good. So that'll go in with the other tubers ready for storage. Well, I hope that was useful for you. It can look daunting to start to clean tubers for the first time. It's difficult to see the shape and the structure and what's what. But when you start to trim away the hair roots, often the anatomy becomes much more discernible. After a very short while you'll find yourself nice and quick, and also you're nice and sure about what you're cutting away and what you're leaving. So thanks very much for listening to this video. The next one will be about your choices in how to store your tubers over winter. So once again, thanks for listening and see you next time. Bye for now.